A quiet town, a chilling mystery. A routine AC repair call turned deadly when Michael Harding walked into an empty house, unaware his wife orchestrated his murder. On the peaceful afternoon of September 19, 2022, Burkesville, Kentucky became the unlikely stage for a chilling tragedy. Michael Harding, a 53-year-old known for his kindness and skill as an air conditioning repairman, set off on what seemed like an ordinary job. He was headed to inspect a unit at a vacant house, a task he had done countless times. But this time was different. As he stepped into the still empty property, a sense of foreboding seemed to hang in the air, though Michael remained unaware of the danger awaiting him. Days later, his lifeless body was found by a real estate agent and potential buyers drawn to the scene by a terrible odor. Michael had been shot multiple times and left sprawled on the floor. Blood stained the wooden boards, silent witnesses to the horror that had unfolded. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community. Who would harbor such hatred for a man known for his warmth and generosity? Why lure him to an isolated house for such a cold, calculated act? Investigators quickly determined it wasn't random. Michael had been set up. The meeting was a deliberate trap. But by whom and why? The town's quiet charm was shattered as detectives peeled back the layers of his life, uncovering tensions in his marriage to Julie Harding, a decorated California Highway Patrol captain. Their pending divorce and strained relationship soon drew Julie into the spotlight of suspicion. But even as Julie's name surfaced, the case proved far more tangled than anyone could have imagined. Shadows of a larger conspiracy began to emerge. A hired hand, meticulous planning, and motives buried deep beneath the surface. How had Michael, a man simply doing his job, become the target of such malice? Who could orchestrate such a merciless act? These questions hung heavy as the investigation unraveled, leaving the quiet town of Burkesville forever changed. Michael Harding was the kind of man who fit easily into any community. In Salina, Tennessee, where he had recently settled, he quickly earned a reputation as a dependable and skilled air conditioning repairman. Neighbors spoke warmly of his generosity, offering help without asking for anything in return. Fishing by the lake and chatting with locals became part of his routine, a peaceful rhythm he hoped would define his retirement. But Michael's life wasn't without its complexities. He had been married to Julie Harding, a respected California Highway Patrol captain known for her dedication and leadership. Julie was admired in her community, but her demanding career often required sacrifices. Over time, the distance between them became more than geographical. Michael embraced a slower pace of life in Tennessee, while Julie remained committed to her work in California. The emotional gap between them widened. In 2019, the couple sold their California properties and bought a picturesque lakeside home in Salina, envisioning it as a fresh start. Yet, the idyllic setting couldn't repair their relationship. By 2022, they were living separate lives, their marriage fractured beyond repair. Divorce proceedings had begun, though both seemed reluctant to fully sever ties. Michael adjusted quickly, even starting a new relationship, while Julie focused on her career and community work. Friends whispered about unresolved tensions, particularly over financial matters and their shared dog, Charlie. The cracks in their seemingly amicable split were subtle but significant. What appeared as a calm separation on the surface concealed deeper currents of resentment and frustration. For Julie, the strain was compounded by the image she maintained as a respected public servant. For Michael, his move to Tennessee meant to bring peace, instead became the backdrop for betrayal and, ultimately, violence. As investigators later discovered, the separation wasn't just emotionally charged, it became the foundation for something far darker. Michael's life ended not in peace, but in brutality. What began as a quiet attempt at rebuilding spiraled into chaos, pulling both Michael and Julie into a web of conflict, suspicion, and tragedy. When Michael's body was discovered, it was clear his death wasn't random. Someone had planned it, a calculated act fueled by motives buried in the complexities of their lives. Peace for Michael would remain as elusive as the answers to the questions his death left behind. September 19, 2022 started like any other day for Michael Harding. A trusted and skilled air conditioning repairman, he received a request to inspect a unit at a vacant house in Burkesville, Kentucky. Known for his willingness to help, Michael accepted without hesitation. It seemed like a routine job, but it would be his last. The house, listed for sale on the outskirts of town, appeared ordinary. Its electronic lock, installed to simplify real estate showings, was unwittingly exploited by someone with sinister intentions. A call had been made to the listing agent, posing as a potential buyer's representative to obtain access. It was a simple ruse, and no one suspected anything amiss. Michael arrived in the afternoon, tools in hand, unaware of the danger waiting inside. He was a man used to solving problems, not anticipating one of his own. Inside the quiet, empty house, someone had set a deadly trap, exploiting his trust and routine to perfection. The attack, investigators later revealed, was ruthless. Michael was ambushed, shot multiple times at close range. Blood splattered across the walls, a grim testament to the brutality of the crime. Whoever had orchestrated this had no intention of leaving him alive. Days passed before his decomposing body was found by a real estate agent and potential buyers. The grisly discovery sent shockwaves through the community and turned a sleepy town into the scene of a horrifying mystery. Questions immediately arose. Who would do this to Michael, a man known for his kindness and generosity? Why lure him to such an isolated location? The meticulous nature of the murder made it clear this was no crime of passion. It was calculated, deliberate, and cold. Investigators began unraveling Michael's life, examining his relationships, finances, and daily habits. One name surfaced repeatedly: Julie Harding, his estranged wife, a respected California Highway Patrol captain. Julie was miles away at the time, expressing shock and devastation over the news. But as evidence began to emerge, cracks appeared in her facade of mourning. Hidden beneath the surface was a web of secrets, lies, and betrayal. This was not just a murder investigation. It was the beginning of a chilling conspiracy that would stretch across 3 states, leaving behind a trail of destruction that no one could have anticipated. The investigation into Michael Harding's murder was anything but straightforward. From the start, it was clear someone had gone to great lengths to ensure his death. The crime scene yielded little: no witnesses, no fingerprints, and no direct ties to the vacant house where his body was found. Yet, as detectives delved into Michael's final days, they began uncovering a trail of subtle but damning clues. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source: Michael's phone records. Among his usual calls and messages was an unfamiliar number, unregistered and seemingly untraceable. This burner phone turned out to be the key to unlocking the case. It had been used to contact Michael and lure him to the house where he was ambushed. But who owned it? The answer came with a chilling name: Thomas O'Donnell, a 60-year-old man with a troubled past. Known for violent behavior and with restraining orders filed by an ex-girlfriend, O'Donnell wasn't on anyone's radar until investigators matched the burner phone's movements to his. Jeep's data revealed the phone had been activated weeks before Michael's murder and tracked across state lines, from California to Tennessee to Kentucky. At every step, its movements aligned with O'Donnell's known whereabouts. But why would O'Donnell target Michael? That question led detectives to Julie Harding, Michael's estranged wife. Phone records showed nearly 200 calls between Julie and the burner phone between July and September 2022. While the contents of these calls couldn't be retrieved, their frequency raised serious suspicions. Was Julie involved in planning her husband's murder? Adding to the intrigue were Julie's unexplained financial transactions. In the months leading up to Michael's death, she had withdrawn over $222,000 from her bank accounts. An unusual move for someone with no apparent reason to need such large sums. Investigators suspected the money could have been used to pay O'Donnell for carrying out the crime. The connections between Julie and O'Donnell grew harder to ignore. Surveillance footage showed O'Donnell's vehicle near Julie's residence multiple times, and his presence in her neighborhood just weeks before the murder suggested a relationship neither had disclosed. The evidence painted a picture of calculated planning and collaboration. Investigators also uncovered how O'Donnell gained access to the vacant house. By posing as a real estate agent and claiming to represent interested buyers, he obtained the electronic lock code to the property. This small but significant detail highlighted the extent of his preparation and the deliberate nature of the crime. On December 8, 2022, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Authorities arrested Thomas O'Donnell at Sacramento International Airport, charging him with Michael's murder. Hours later, Julie Harding was arrested on unrelated charges of stalking and trespassing. Though her charges initially seemed minor, the timing of the arrests suggested otherwise. Investigators were closing in on the connection between the two. The arrests sent shockwaves through the communities that had admired Julie as a respected law enforcement officer. How had a woman with such a sterling reputation become entangled in a murder plot? And what role had she truly played in Michael's death? These questions loomed large as the investigation pressed forward, uncovering more about the tangled web of relationships, deceit, and betrayal that led to Michael's tragic end. When news of Julie Harding's arrest broke on December 8, 2022, it stunned her friends, colleagues, and community. As a respected captain in the California Highway Patrol, Julie had earned admiration for her dedication and leadership. Her arrest on charges of stalking and trespassing seemed almost unthinkable, but the implications of her connection to her estranged husband's murder made it even more shocking. The charges stemmed from an incident weeks earlier involving Michael Harding's new girlfriend and their dog, Charlie. After Michael's death, the girlfriend had taken custody of Charlie, but Julie, emotionally attached to the dog, wanted him back. On October 10, 2022, security footage captured Julie entering the girlfriend's home uninvited and taking Charlie. Despite her previous request to resolve the matter at a police station, Julie acted on her own terms, prompting a trespassing complaint. Days later, the girlfriend reported feeling stalked, escalating an already tense situation. At first, Julie's actions appeared personal and unrelated to Michael's murder, but for investigators, they were another piece of a troubling puzzle. Combined with her significant financial withdrawals, frequent communications with Thomas O'Donnell, and mounting circumstantial evidence, Julie's arrest painted a picture of a woman whose life was unraveling under pressure. Julie's time in custody was brief. She was released on bail soon after her arrest. Tragically, just 2 days later, on December 10th, a postal worker discovered her body in the garage of her Tennessee residence. The scene was grim. A single gunshot wound and a handwritten note that read, "Michael, I guess you still win." The cryptic message offered little clarity but hinted at deep emotional turmoil. Authorities quickly suggested suicide as the cause, citing no signs of foul play. The media echoed this conclusion, though some questioned whether Julie's death might conceal darker truths. Investigators began combing through her life, trying to understand what could have driven her to such a breaking point. Julie's death added another layer of complexity to an already convoluted case. With her gone, many of the case's questions were left unanswered. Had she orchestrated her estranged husband's murder, recruiting O'Donnell as her accomplice? Or was she merely a pawn in a scheme she couldn't control? And what had pushed her so far? As friends and family struggled with these questions, investigators continued to examine her connection to O'Donnell. Phone records, financial transactions, and cards signed with O'Donnell's nickname, Rab, pointed to a deeper relationship between the two. Evidence suggested that their connection went beyond casual acquaintance, raising more questions about the extent of their collaboration. Julie Harding's fall from grace was as swift as it was tragic. A woman, once celebrated for her integrity and leadership, now stood accused, even in death, of plotting her husband's brutal murder. But with her death, the case lost a key figure, forcing investigators to rely solely on evidence to uncover the truth. Attention now turned to Thomas O'Donnell. With his arrest and the evidence mounting against him, the case seemed closer to resolution. Yet questions about motive, collaboration, and the dynamics of Julie and Michael's relationship lingered, leaving behind a trail of mystery and unease that investigators were determined to unravel. The case against Thomas O'Donnell. With Julie Harding gone, the task of unraveling Michael Harding's murder rested squarely on investigators. The evidence against Thomas O'Donnell, the alleged hitman, was substantial but circumstantial. Every clue had to be meticulously pieced together to form a narrative strong enough to stand up in court. The burner phone became the centerpiece of the investigation. Activated on August 29, 2022, It was used extensively in the weeks leading to Michael's death. FBI analysts traced its signal to multiple locations, including Julie Harding's home in California and the vacant house in Burkesville, Kentucky, where Michael was killed. On the day of the crime, September 19th, the phone's movements matched O'Donnell's, placing him in Burkesville at the critical time. The crime's precision left no doubt about its premeditation. Investigators discovered O'Donnell had gained access to the vacant house by pretending to be a real estate agent. A single phone call to the listing company had secured the electronic lock code, giving him free access to set the ambush. This revelation highlighted not only O'Donnell's cunning, but the calculated planning behind the murder. Financial records provided another damning piece of evidence. Julie Harding had made suspicious withdrawals exceeding $222,000 in the months before the murder. Although there was no direct paper trail linking the money to O'Donnell, the timing and amounts were too conspicuous to dismiss. Investigators theorized the funds were used to pay O'Donnell for the job. Surveillance footage proved pivotal. Cameras in Burkesville captured O'Donnell's Toyota Tundra passing through town just hours before Michael's body was found. Additional footage from nearby states corroborated his movements, weaving a timeline that connected him undeniably to the crime scene. The evidence painted O'Donnell as a man hired to carry out a cold-blooded murder, yet the question of motive loomed large. Was he simply in it for financial gain? Or did his connection with Julie Harding run deeper than investigators realized? On December 15, 2022, a grand jury in Cumberland County, Kentucky, indicted O'Donnell on first-degree murder charges. Prosecutors announced their intent to seek the death penalty, citing the murder's premeditation and financial motive. O'Donnell, however, denied any involvement, refusing to cooperate or shed light on his relationship with Julie. As the trial approached, the unanswered questions surrounding Julie Harding's role lingered. Was she the mastermind, orchestrating the murder to escape a failing marriage? Or was she a pawn caught in a deadly scheme? Her sudden death left investigators without a key witness, forcing them to rely entirely on the evidence. The trial promised to be a spectacle, with prosecutors leaning on forensic evidence to build their case. Surveillance footage, financial records, and Jeep's data painted a chilling story, but gaps in the narrative kept the case shrouded in uncertainty. With the courtroom as the final stage, the world awaited the truth. Would Thomas O'Donnell face justice, or would the mysteries of Michael Harding's murder remain forever unanswered? By early 2023, the trial of Thomas O'Donnell captivated the nation. The brutal murder of Michael Harding and the tragic death of Julie Harding had turned what seemed like a quiet marital fallout into a case riddled with betrayal and violence. The courtroom buzzed with tension as prosecutors worked to prove that O'Donnell was a cold-blooded killer, motivated by financial greed and acting at the behest of Julie Harding. The prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence but was woven into a compelling narrative. The burner phone, suspicious financial withdrawals, and surveillance footage formed the crux of their argument. They painted O'Donnell as a methodical planner who exploited the electronic lock on the vacant house, using anonymity and precision to set the stage for Michael's ambush. Expert witnesses were central to the case. FBI analysts testified about the burner phone's movements, tracking its signal across states and placing O'Donnell at the crime scene. Forensic accountants highlighted Julie Harding's large cash withdrawals, totaling over $222,000, just months before the murder. The proximity of these events to Michael's death created a damning timeline, suggesting the funds were part of a murder-for-hire scheme. O'Donnell's defense countered with vigor, emphasizing the circumstantial nature of the evidence. His lawyers argued that no direct connection, such as DNA or fingerprints, tied O'Donnell to the murder. They suggested Julie Harding, with her law enforcement training and emotional instability, could have orchestrated or even committed the crime herself. The absence of the murder weapon or eyewitness testimony became central to their argument for reasonable doubt. The trial took a dramatic turn when prosecutors presented previously unrevealed evidence. Cards recovered from Julie Harding's office, signed with O'Donnell's nickname Rab, suggested a close, potentially conspiratorial relationship between the two. The discovery bolstered the theory that Julie had enlisted O'Donnell to carry out the killing, though her precise motivations remained unclear. One of the most pivotal moments came with the replaying of surveillance footage. Grainy video showed O'Donnell's Toyota Tundra driving past the vacant house just hours before Michael's body was discovered. The timing was undeniable, aligning perfectly with the murder. The courtroom sat in silence as the prosecutor underscored the meticulous nature of O'Donnell's movements that day. Despite the mounting evidence, O'Donnell maintained his innocence, refusing to testify and invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. His silence left a void in the case, preventing either side from fully unraveling his motives or whether he acted alone. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. On June 15, 2023, Thomas O'Donnell was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and the financial gain involved, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the prosecution had sought the death penalty, the absence of direct physical evidence tying O'Donnell to the murder weapon likely swayed the jury toward a lesser sentence. Even with the verdict, the case left many questions unanswered. Julie Harding's role loomed large over the trial, her intentions and actions clouded by speculation. Was she the calculating mastermind of a murder-for-hire plot, or had she been drawn into a deadly scheme by forces beyond her control? The cryptic note she left before her death, "Michael, I guess you still win," only deepened the mystery. For those who knew Michael and Julie, the trial marked the end of a harrowing chapter but brought little closure. What began as a marriage filled with promise had unraveled into betrayal, murder, and heartbreak, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and lingering doubts. Though the legal resolution brought some sense of justice, the emotional scars would remain long after the courtroom doors had closed. With the trial over, the families and communities connected to Michael and Julie Harding were left to confront the tragedy's aftermath. The courtroom had delivered a verdict, but the emotional scars and unanswered questions lingered. Their story was not just about one brutal murder. It was about the unraveling of human relationships and the desperate, often dark paths people take when pushed to the edge. For those who knew Michael Harding, the verdict brought some sense of justice, but not closure. Michael was a man defined by kindness and reliability, a steady presence in the lives of his friends and neighbors in Salina, Tennessee. He had been embracing his new life, finding peace in fishing and small-town connections. But his violent death overshadowed the image of the gentle, hard-working man his community had known. The terror and betrayal of his final moments left an indelible mark on those who loved him. Julie Harding's story became a cautionary tale. On the surface, she seemed to have it all: a respected position as a California Highway Patrol captain, a reputation for professionalism, and admiration from her peers. But beneath her polished exterior, she struggled with a failing marriage, financial pressures, and perhaps a growing sense of losing control over her life. Her alleged involvement in Michael's murder and her own tragic death painted a picture of a woman caught in a web she may have helped create, or been ensnared in by others. Thomas O'Donnell, convicted of Michael's murder, remained a puzzle. His silence during the trial left lingering doubts about his true motivations and the depth of his relationship with Julie. Was he merely a hired hand driven by greed, or was their connection more complex? Without his confession, many questions went unanswered, leaving a gap that even the most detailed investigation couldn't fill. The case also underscored the capabilities and limitations of modern forensic technology. Tools like cell phone tracking, financial records, and surveillance footage were pivotal in piecing together the events, but they couldn't reveal the emotional or psychological dynamics behind the actions. They showed where people were, but not why they acted as they did. In the end, the story of Michael and Julie Harding became a grim reminder of the fragility of human relationships. What began as a partnership full of promise unraveled into betrayal, violence, and death. Their tragic ends highlighted the destructive potential of unresolved conflict and unchecked emotions. For the communities they left behind, life moved on, but the scars remained. Neighbors in Salina remembered Michael's generosity with a mix of fondness and sadness, while Julie's colleagues in California struggled to reconcile the woman they admired with the events surrounding her death. As the dust settled, one truth stood out. This was a tragedy without neat answers or full understanding. It was a story of love turned sour, trust shattered, and lives lost too soon. Though the courtroom brought legal resolution, the emotional and moral questions raised by their story would haunt everyone involved for years to come. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more fascinating content. Your support keeps us digging deeper. See you in the next story.